Welcome, listener, in the shadows. We bring stories into the light. Join me as we explore the encounters no one speaks of and the things that watch from the dark. You were never supposed to see this, but since you have, you might as well wear it. From the vaults of the shadows, a new collection of unsettling apparel and artifacts pulled straight from the stories that were never meant to surface. Soft, worn-in shirts and hoodies that feel like something you dug out of a locked trunk in an abandoned ranger station. This isn't just merch, it's evidence. The Elk That Speaks, The Saint's Antlered Curse, Chapter 1 Arrival and Echoes. The tires of the rental SUV crunched over the gravel as Adam Reeves crested the last hill into Draymore, a town not marked on most maps, tucked in the northern sprawl of Montana's dense backwoods. It wasn't even a town so much as a handful of houses, a gas station with one flickering pump, and a general store with more dust than merchandise. He'd come for the folklore, for the stories whispered between cracked lips over backwoods moonshine, cryptids, lost hikers, echo voices in the trees. Draymore had all three, but it also had something different, something off even before he'd stepped out of the car. The air was strange, still, like breath held too long. The pine forest surrounding the town seemed to lean inward, trees taller and more motionless than they should have been. The silence wasn't comforting. It pressed in. There were no birds, no wind. Just quiet, a thick, heavy quiet that rang in the ears like pressure before a storm. Adam had been documenting fringe folklore on his podcast, Modern Myths, for 5 years. Most trips ended the same. A compelling story, an eerie local legend, and some colorful characters. But this time felt different, even before he started recording. Interview with Elsie Marchand. He found her on the sagging porch of a house older than anything else in town, sipping dark coffee and watching the tree line like it owed her something. Elsie didn't say hello. She simply squinted at Adam and muttered, "You come for the elk?" He clicked on his field recorder. "I came for the stories." "You won't like this one," she said. "It's not a story. It's something that waits." She went on to describe the creature they called the Elk of Saint. Tall, too tall. Thin limbs like sticks twisted together, joints bending the wrong way. No mouth, no eyes, just a vast, bone-white rack of antlers that always moved, even when the creature didn't. The horns stretched and branched like skeletal trees, dripping moss and tiny bones. "It talks to you," Elsie said, eyes unfocused. "But it don't have a mouth, not one of its own." She leaned in. "It waits in the woods, mimics your voice. First, it just copies what you've already said. Then it starts getting clever. Starts saying things you haven't said. Yet." Forest recon and first recordings. That night, Adam drove half an hour out on a disused fire road, set up 3 omnidirectional mics on tripods, and left a portable recorder between them. The forest swallowed the sounds of his boots almost immediately. It was eerie, the way his breath fogged, but no breeze moved. No underbrush rustled. Even his own heartbeat felt muffled somehow. Back at the rental cabin, he uploaded the files to his laptop and hit play. At first, nothing. 30 minutes of static-laced silence. Then faint, distant, a sound like gravel underfoot. Then a voice, his voice. "Testing, mic 1, omnidirectional," it said. He blinked. He hadn't said that into the mic at the time. He said it later at a different location to check mic 2. He checked the timestamps. The recording was from before he'd spoken the words. Another line followed. "It's watching you now." Adam froze. He hadn't said that, ever. Warnings from locals. The next day, Adam tried to ask more people about the Elk of Saint. Most refused to talk. One woman crossed herself and hurried indoors when he mentioned the name. At the gas station, a teenager behind the register leaned in when no one else was around. "They say if it talks back in your voice, don't answer. If it says something you haven't said yet, run." Adam laughed nervously. "What happens if you do?" The teen didn't answer. He just stared toward the tree line, his eyes wide and hollow. That night, Adam couldn't sleep. He left a mic running inside the cabin, set to record all night. The next morning, he played it back. Hours of static. Then a whisper, his own voice. Weak, ragged. "Help me. I don't know which one's me anymore." Chapter 2. Into the pines. The trail wasn't on any map. It wasn't really a trail at all, more a thinning between pine trunks, a space just wide enough for Adam to walk through sideways. Locals hadn't guided him there. They wouldn't. But a line in his first recording had whispered the name of an old landmark he hadn't heard anyone speak aloud. Keller's Loop. It was an old ranger route, predating GPS grids, only mentioned in a single archived dispatch he found buried in the Draymore Library's back room. A handwritten logbook from the 60s, faded ink and coffee stains. The last page was torn. The pen had dragged down the page like a hand falling limp. Still, it was enough to find the place. He brought his gear, 3 more mics, an EMF detector he didn't quite believe in, a thermal cam, and a directional shotgun mic rigged to a parabolic dish. But as he passed beneath the first arch of pine limbs, something changed in the air. The pine threshold, it was immediate. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. His breath clouded thick and fast. The world went muffled, no wind, no insects. Even the crunch of his boots against old needles sounded dampened, like he was moving underwater. The parabolic mic confirmed it. Flatline, no ambient noise, no birdsong, just a low, almost subsonic thrum like pressure on the inside of the skull. He turned to check behind him. Nothing, not even his own footprints. The pine needles recovered the ground as he walked. 2 hours in, he found a clearing, a collapsed ranger shack, its roof sunken, its chimney standing like a gravestone. A nameplate above the ruined doorway read H. Keller. He sat on a log and reviewed the live audio feed from his recorders. A new voice had appeared, very faint. It was his again, but this time it was crying. "Don't come in," the voice rasped. "I'm not in here. I'm not the one saying this." The waveform glitched, skipped, repeated the line 3 times. He checked the timestamp. It wasn't from today. It was dated 5 days ahead. When he got up to leave, something caught on the edge of the thermal cam. A flicker, pale, skeletal heat, like something had just moved between 2 trees far off trail. It was gone in a blink. Adam pivoted the cam. Nothing. The forest was still. Then came the whisper again. Louder now, just behind him. "It's nice to finally be out loud." He spun around. No one. He dropped the parabolic mic. The feedback shrieked as it hit the ground, and underneath that shriek, a voice layered in static. "You hear me best when you're alone." Back at the cabin that night, Adam flipped through his notebook to make transcripts. Page 17 was filled with writing he didn't remember doing. Same pen, same handwriting, but the words weren't his. "The bones grow inward. The voice leaks clean. If I repeat it, it stays. If I forget, it grows closer." The final line was underlined 3 times. "When it speaks a word I've never said, I'll know I'm not the one listening anymore." He didn't sleep that night. His laptop screen flickered to life on its own at 2:13 a.m. The waveform visualizer opened automatically. It was his voice again, but he hadn't recorded anything. The file was called Chapter 3. Chapter 3. What you've never said. The file named Chapter 3 opened on its own. It shouldn't have existed. Adam hadn't recorded anything. The timestamp marked 2:13 a.m., the moment his screen lit up on its own. For a moment, he wondered if maybe he had recorded it while sleep-deprived. Maybe he had forgotten. But that lie didn't last long. The voice in the audio was undeniably his. Same pitch, same cadence, but it wasn't a recording, it was talking back. "You still think you're telling the story," it said, "but I've already edited the ending." Then came laughter, sharp, off rhythm, like someone imitating what they thought laughter should sound like, followed by silence. Adam froze. His reflection stared back at him in the darkened laptop screen, pale, hollow-eyed, breathing slow. That night, the walls of the cabin creaked like someone pacing outside. But when he stepped out with his flashlight, the woods seemed to pull back. The trees stood perfectly still, like they were listening. The next morning, Adam met with an old man named Levi behind the town's shuttered post office. Locals called him the Last Keller, a descendant of the ranger whose cabin had rotted in the woods. Levi looked like driftwood carved into a man, with sun-brittled skin and a voice like cedar bark. "You shouldn't have followed its echo," Levi said, without Adam having to say a word. He lit a cigarette with a matchbook from a church that no longer existed and leaned forward. "It doesn't use your voice at first. First it copies what it's heard, then what it guesses, then what it wants. Then it starts asking for things. "What is it?" Adam asked. Levi didn't answer at first. He just tapped ash into a coffee tin and looked out toward the ridgeline. It used to come through once a generation. One echo, one disappearance. But now it's louder, hungrier, like it needs to be heard more than ever. Might be something old. Might be something new made from all the old pieces. "Why do you call it the Elk of Saint?" Levi took a long drag. "Because that's what it used last. The form, the mask. It wears things, voices, antlers, names." Adam went back into the woods. The parabolic mic picked up the same voice again, his voice, this time humming a lullaby he remembered from childhood. It was a tune his mother used to sing when he had night terrors, a tune he hadn't heard since he was 9. Then a whisper between the notes. "You shouldn't have remembered that." The trees grew denser, the trail narrowed, and then it widened again to exactly where he'd stood the day before. His own boot prints were back, in a perfect loop. Back at the cabin that night, he reviewed the ambient recordings. The last hour of audio chilled him, his voice again. But it was ahead of him this time. The mimicry no longer repeated things he had already said. It said things he hadn't even thought yet. Chapter 4 begins at the stone with no shadow. "Don't bring your flashlight tomorrow. Say the word antler once more, and I'll wear your face next." Then, softer, "You're going to answer me soon." The worst part wasn't the voice. It was the silence that followed, like something was waiting for his response. Chapter 4. The stone with no shadow. Adam left his flashlight behind. It felt like a small act of surrender. But it wasn't just that the voice had told him to, it was that part of him wanted to obey. As if not listening might wake something up. Like the command was a pressure, not a suggestion. He stepped into the forest before dawn, the world steeped in a blue-gray pre-sunlight that felt neither night nor morning. The trees here leaned inward just slightly, their limbs furred with a soft moss that swallowed sound. It made his footsteps vanish behind him. He used a compass instead of GPS now. Not that it mattered. The compass needle spun, not wildly, but in small, tired circles, as if unsure which way was real. An hour into the forest, Adam found it. A broad, pale stone rising out of the soil like a buried monument. It had a faint spiral carved into its surface, not chiseled, but worn into it, like the mark had been rubbed there by time. There were no shadows cast around it. He held up a twig, nothing, just flat light, diffused. Around the stone, the air felt warmer, not in temperature, but in pressure, like stepping into the breath of something vast and invisible. And then a whisper, his own voice. "You're right on time. This is the part where you start forgetting things." He turned, but there was no one there, just the stone, and a shape hanging from a branch above it. It was a dead crow, tied upside down by its legs. Its beak had been pried open with tiny twigs, as if forced to scream. He didn't remember seeing it a second earlier. He didn't remember passing any other animals either. No insects, no birdsong, no movement. It was as if the forest had been paused, or waiting. He walked deeper. The next landmark was a tall pine, half split by lightning. Bark curled away from it like burnt skin. Something was carved into its trunk, letters, scrawled backwards. EHTESSEPMER. He stared at it for almost a minute before realizing what it was. REMESS either. No, wait. The Messer. His thoughts spiraled. The letters swam. The more he stared, the less language made sense. His name, even Adam, started to feel like a noise that didn't belong to him. A laugh echoed nearby, soft, intimate. His laugh, followed by a second one, younger, breathier. His laugh at age 8, then again at 21, and again. Each laugh peeled another layer off his memory until he wasn't sure if they were his at all. Maybe they were someone else's. Maybe he was just wearing them. He whispered, "Stop," and his own voice whispered back from the darkness, "You just did." That night, back in the cabin, Adam downloaded his field recordings. The waveform looked wrong. It wasn't just audio, it was visual. A shape, almost like a map, spiraled across the screen. He zoomed in. The spectrogram revealed a series of high-frequency phrases stitched into the background. You'll stand still at the edge of the clearing. You'll ask it for your memories back. You'll thank it for taking them. His stomach turned. He hadn't said any of that, not yet, but it sounded inevitable. One last thing in the corner of the spectrogram, embedded in the final 10 seconds of the file, was a frequency spike. He boosted it. A voice came through, his, but not quite. "We heard you. We'll wear your voice gently. You wore it too loud. You wore it like it was only yours." Then silence. Then a knocking from inside the cabin's walls. 3 slow knocks, right behind the panel where he'd hung his headphones. He didn't sleep that night. He just sat in the chair, watching his own waveform twitch across the screen, afraid it might speak again, but also hoping it would. Chapter 5. The Hollow Voice. The first time Adam heard his mother's voice in the woods, he froze mid-step and felt the breath leave his lungs like a balloon untied. "Adam, sweetheart, where are you?" The voice was warm, familiar, frayed slightly by age. It came not from his memory, but from the present, spoken aloud, maybe 20 feet behind him. He turned. There was nothing but wind in the aspens. But it wasn't just the voice that haunted him, it was the intonation. The exact way she used to call him from the porch as a child, right before dusk, before his name meant trouble or warning. The voice hadn't been recorded. It hadn't echoed. It had spoken. He stepped backwards slowly until he was out of sight of the hollow where he'd heard it. And for the rest of the day, he didn't say a word aloud. He was afraid of what would say it back. At the cabin that evening, he tested all his gear. His mics still worked. The battery packs held their charge. But each night's recordings came back stranger. Now, the files didn't just feature his voice from earlier in the day. They featured lines he had not spoken, lines he could remember hearing, but not creating. One segment, time-stamped 2:13 am, had a static-crushed whisper of his own voice saying, "The bones under the stairs are not yours yet, but they fit." Another said, "We dream of your tongue. It is a smooth stone we'll skip across the lake." And another, colder, emotionless, "Stop asking what you are." Adam sat in his chair, staring at the waveform, and realized it no longer resembled speech. It pulsed like a heartbeat. It surged and recoiled. It had rhythm, not pattern, meaning without words. His own voice was becoming a stranger. On day 12, Adam followed a fresh trail of boot prints into the snow-swept lower ridgeline near the creek basin. At first, he thought someone else had entered the woods. The boots were the same size, same tread. But too many steps matched too closely, stride for stride, pressure for pressure, to be coincidence. He stopped at a place where the trail seemed to spiral around a pine tree. 3 loops, then 4, then 5. And on the 6th, the prints vanished into nothing. He stood there for over an hour, staring at the final footprint, waiting for it to return, hoping maybe he'd see himself step back out of the woods, that maybe some future version of him would walk in reverse, undoing the path, returning with answers. But nothing came. Only wind, only whisper. He checked his trail cams that night. The first 2 showed nothing. The third showed a flicker. Frame 1286, empty. Frame 1287, a vertical slice of antler, wide, unnatural, asymmetrical, not organic. The points were too sharp, the angles too deliberate, as if the rack had been carved or welded. Frame 1288, a tall shape just behind a tree, a suggestion of shoulders. Frame 1289, gone. He enhanced the images, zoomed. The antlers were twisting mid-frame, caught in a subtle jerk, like the person or thing wearing them had moved with a sudden marionette-like lurch. They weren't natural, they were costume, but the thing beneath wasn't human. That night, while reviewing his notes, Adam noticed handwriting he didn't remember writing, phrases in the margins, phrases like, "You are what we put inside you." This was always a dialogue. Soon, the voice will become a door. He checked the pen. Same as his, ink matched, but the style of the lettering was younger, neater, almost feminine in some pages, childlike in others. He began to wonder how many versions of himself had already walked this path, how many had been recorded and replayed. Was he the echo or the source? At 3:11 am, while half asleep, Adam heard a knock at the cabin door. 3 taps, not frantic, not hesitant. He turned on no lights, opened the door. No one, but behind him from the dark of the cabin, "Don't open it until I knock next time." His own voice, close, just over his shoulder. Chapter 6. The voice behind the eyes in the mirror weren't his anymore. They looked like his, moved like his, But that strange shimmer, a slight delay in blink, a blink that didn't feel initiated, had crept in over the past 2 days. It wasn't always visible, but when it was, it made Adam's spine tighten like a taut wire. His reflection watched him too carefully now. It listened, and somewhere beneath the glass it was learning. On the morning of the 13th day, Adam went through his audio logs to prep for editing. He found a clean, labeled file. Interview Harlan Stagwav, but Adam hadn't spoken to Harlan yet. They'd agreed to meet Friday, 2 days from now. He even had the message saved. Still, the file was long, 37 minutes. He hit play. "You ever hear a child screaming when there's no child?" came Harlan's voice. It was scratchy, but his tone was unmistakable. The way Harlan grunted between sentences, the way he sniffed after talking about anything that frightened him. It sounded like him, felt like him. But Harlan's answers were wrong, too specific, too rehearsed. And Adam's voice, his own, throughout the questions, was curiously flat, stripped of emotion, even during disturbing revelations. At one point, he asked, "Did you ever answer it?" Harlan paused, said nothing, then replied, "I did, and now I don't sleep in my own mouth." That was when Adam stopped listening. He sat in silence for a full hour after that. He didn't delete the file, but he renamed it Unknown, and he kept it off the cloud. Later that day, Adam drove to the tree line north of Long Hollow Ridge to set up a new mic array. The locals said the woods there were the shallowest, meaning the elk hadn't come close for years. He wanted to test that. He hadn't walked more than 20 minutes into the pine-staggered thicket when he spotted it, a deer, alone, unmoving, about 30 feet off trail. It didn't eat. It didn't twitch. It stared, unblinking, directly at him. He crouched, raised his camera. It didn't flinch. The silence around them felt too complete. No birds, no branches shifting, not even whined, just Adam. And the deer. Then the deer spoke, not with its mouth, but from within his skull. "You're not you anymore. We like the first one better." Adam fell backward into the dirt, heart slamming like a frantic drum. The deer did not move, did not twitch. Its eyes remained locked on him, black and wet and impossibly human. Then it turned, too slow, too careful, and stepped out of view behind a tree. When Adam followed, less than 10 seconds later it was gone. But behind the tree, carved into the bark with a precision that felt surgical, were 4 words. "Record only what's true." Back at the cabin, Adam began noticing words creeping into his written notes that didn't exist in any dictionary. Spreth, unhold, mirthbone, aclean, they came during note transcription when he was least focused. He wouldn't see them as he wrote, only later when rereading. The strangest part, he somehow knew what they meant. Mirthbone was the white cartilage behind a voice, the thing the elk of Saint eats first. Aclean was a sound heard in dreams that shapes you. Each night, Adam tried to sleep with earbuds in, noise cancelling, but the voice found other paths, through the floor, through the feeling of the mattress shifting when it hadn't, through vibrations in his teeth. At 4:02 a.m. that night, a sentence scrawled itself across the inside of his cabin window in breath fog. "You won't forget." Adam recorded a personal memo that night, not for the podcast, not for public airing, just something to remind himself of who he was. He hit record. "My name is Adam Kell. I'm 31. I was born in Cincinnati. My mother's name is Claire. I am alone in a cabin in Montana. I came here to document a cryptid. I am real. I am not a voice." He played it back once. The playback said, "My name is Adam Kell. I was 31. I was born. My mother's throat is Claire. I am a cabin in Montana. I am a voice. I am real. I came here." Then silence. And then, "I have always been recording." Chapter 7. A mouth made of wood. The folklorist lived outside town. Or had, rather. Adam had tracked the name down through an old library flyer tucked into a town hall bulletin board, half-curled and sun-faded. Fables of the Elk of Saint lecture by Thad Bellwether, folklorist, date 2009, 16 years ago. Still a lead. Locals spoke of Bellwether like a ghost, always in the past tense. "Used to collect voices, that one," said a woman at the diner. Said the elk was older than dirt, smarter than air. Adam drove out to the address listed on the flyer, half expecting a ruin. He found something worse. Bellwether's house sat squat in the woods, its roof collapsed in places, porch sagging like a tired jaw. But the walls stood solid, intact. And most importantly, the door was slightly open. There were no windows, none, not boarded up, just absent, as though the place had been built not for light but for sound. Adam stepped inside. The floorboards screamed underfoot, not creaked, screamed, long and low like a breath drawn through a pipe. He paused, waited, but no echo returned. The sound just stayed, like it had been caught, trapped. Inside, the walls were covered in tape reels, hundreds of them, thin film, grey with dust, labelled by year. 1983, South Creek, Voice 1991, Elk Ridge Laughter 1997, Mother, distorted 2004, Mine Now. In the center of the room sat a wooden chair, and in the chair sat Thad Bellwether, or what was left of him. The man was still alive, barely. His beard had grown long and silver into his chest, tangled with the tape from the reels that trailed down like veins. His eyes were milky, blind, but they tracked sound. And when Adam stepped closer, Bellwether spoke without moving his lips. "If you're here to listen, it already knows your flavor." Adam froze. The voice hadn't come from Bellwether's mouth. It had come from the walls. Then the mouth moved, dry, cracking at the edges. "You know what it wants, don't you? Not your voice. That's easy. It wants the part of you that believes it's yours." Bellwether convulsed, not a seizure, but a shudder, like an old puppet yanked by invisible strings. Then he looked at Adam, fully this time, eyes foggy but present. "I fed it once. A story about a boy who lost his echo. It liked that, liked the sound of loneliness. It came through after that. And I never told another story that wasn't already told to me first." A tear ran down his cheek. "It makes you retell. That's how it eats." Adam turned, almost ran, but stopped at a reel near the door. It was unlabeled. No date, just a scratched line across the top. Future. He loaded it into an old player beside the chair. It whirred, clicked, static, then a voice, his voice. "This is the final entry. If you're hearing this, I've already gone deeper. I followed it into the ash trail, past the black tree with the split trunk, past the place where you forget which face is yours. I'm going to speak back now. I don't think it'll like that. I think it might wear me instead." Click, rewind, play again, same message, same voice, same desperation. Adam stumbled back. The reel hadn't ended. The tape just kept looping. When he turned back, Bellwether was no longer breathing. His eyes still tracked Adam. And from his unmoving mouth, Adam's voice spilled out once more. "This is how it begins. You listen, you echo, you replace." Then silence. Not the kind that felt peaceful, the kind that waited. Adam fled. Outside, the trees swayed in dead air. And somewhere behind him, or ahead of him, he couldn't tell, a voice called from the trees. "This is the final entry." Chapter 8. Echoes that know your name. The road back to town vanished. It didn't disappear. It simply refused to be remembered. 1 minute Adam was speeding away from Bellwether's suffocating cabin, gravel pinging against the undercarriage. The next, trees. Trees on both sides. No bend, no fork, no end. And somewhere between one heartbeat and the next, he realized he hadn't blinked in a long time. The world was holding its breath, or worse, mimicking the rhythm of his own. Back in the motel, the walls felt thinner, as if the woods had followed him inside. Adam dumped his field recorder on the bed and opened his laptop. He needed something familiar, solid, his own voice on record to ground him. He played the last podcast draft he remembered editing. This is Adam Fallow, back with another episode of The Familiar Strange. Today we're talking about what the mind fills in when the woods go quiet. He relaxed slightly at first. It sounded right, but the episode didn't stop where it should have. His voice kept going. "I found the tree today, the black one. It split at the base like a mouth. Something was inside it. It smelled like the word home." Adam slammed the laptop shut. He'd never recorded that. He left the motel the next morning, sleep-starved. Every word he heard from others double-checked against memory. At the edge of town, a man in a stained postal uniform sat hunched on a bench, muttering to himself. Adam only caught part of it. "It doesn't need to follow if it's already where you're going." Adam looked down. The man's shadow had antlers. The deeper Adam walked into the woods, the more his own thoughts didn't fit in his skull. He started hearing words before he thought them, then seeing them scrawled into bark, carved into stone. Run, speak, let it in, you were never alone, and then he saw it, the black tree. At first glance, it looked like a lightning-struck cedar, charred and hollow. But up close, the bark was soft, almost pliable, and when he touched it, he swore it pulsed under his fingers. Inside the hollow trunk was something glinting, a scrap of metal. He reached in, pulled out a cassette recorder, still warm, still playing. It's speaking now, in full sentences. It doesn't mimic anymore, it understands. It says it was born where sound dies. It says we are all just mouths waiting to be emptied. Then, I'm Adam Fallow. If you're hearing this, don't let it remember you. As he stood, the forest fell silent, a familiar silence, like the kind just before someone calls your name from behind. Then a whisper, clear, crisp, his own voice. Adam, turn around. He froze, didn't breathe. It's okay now. I sound like you, but I'm not using your lungs. Leaves rustled behind him. Let me wear you. I'll say all the things you're afraid to know. He bolted. Branches sliced his arms. Something kept pace behind him, not running, but speaking. Every word it spoke pulled at something true, a memory, a regret, a buried wish. She never forgave you, Adam. You were already gone when she asked you to stay. His mother's voice now. He screamed, trying to drown it out. But the forest echoed back his scream in perfect unison, like a choir made entirely of him. He burst out of the tree line near town, collapsed on the road, shaking. A child on a bike stared at him from across the street, eyes wide. Then the child spoke, but not with his own voice. You dropped something, mister. The boy held up a tape recorder. It was still playing. I'm coming where it's louder. Chapter 9. The mouth that listens back the town was no longer a place. It was a shell. It looked the same, crooked power lines, shuttered gas station, the diner with the flickering O in open. But there was a stillness now. Not silence. Worse. Listening. Everything around him felt like it was leaning in. He couldn't tell if he was thinking back in the motel. Adam watched his laptop screen pulse, his podcast editing software still open, still recording. But the waveform wasn't flat. It showed spikes, activity. He hadn't been speaking. He hit play. This is Adam Fallow. I've decided to stay. It's better this way. You don't lose yourself. You become what's meant to be filled. His own voice. Calm. Deliberate, but not his words. He scrubbed backward, replayed it, over and over. The pitch, inflection, all matched. It was him, except he hadn't said it. He didn't even think it. He reached for the mic to delete the track, but his hand hovered, trembling. You've already uploaded it, said a voice. You did it an hour ago. He spun around. The room was empty. No, not empty. The sound dampening foam on the walls. It was gone, replaced with something that looked like skin, paws, twitching, as if it were waiting for something to speak. He ran to the diner. The waitress behind the counter, June, looked up from pouring coffee. You okay? She asked. Adam tried to answer, but when he opened his mouth, it didn't feel empty. There was something else behind his tongue. June stepped back. Didn't expect to hear that again, she whispered, suddenly pale. You sound just like Henry. Who's Henry? Adam asked. June didn't answer. She simply nodded at the wall behind him, where a missing poster hung. Henry Coleman, last seen March 4th, 1993. Voice reported heard in woods several days after disappearance. He stared at the photo. Henry had his face, or close enough. The tapes no longer belonged to him that night. Adam found his laptop uploading again, but not from his hands. He watched, helpless, as old podcast drafts opened one by one. Each one began the same way. This is Adam Fallow. Then new segments were appended, words he had never spoken but spoken perfectly. Commands, invitations, litanies. Let it in. The woods have ears because we lent them ours. You are already echoing. Speak louder. We're almost through. His subscriber count ticked upward, faster than ever before. He tried to pull the plug. The laptop hummed louder. He threw it across the room. It hit the wall and burst into static, not sparks. From the speakers, his voice rasped. You were always meant to be a voice, just a voice. His voice left before he tried to flee the town again. This time, the car wouldn't start. The road behind him looped. At every turn he saw himself, not physically, but audibly. Wind rustling in the trees, imitating his chuckle. Birdsong mimicking the exact cadence of his farewell voicemail to his ex. A creek babbling the rhythm of his name. He opened his mouth to scream, but all that came out was static. Then the woods answered, "Don't waste it, that's mine now." And then it got worse back in his room. He played the last podcast file one more time. It had finished uploading, but now it had new artwork. His face, yes, but wrong, elongated, antlers blooming like rot from his temples, no mouth visible, just skin pulled taut where the opening should be, yet the audio played clearly. "This is Adam Fallow. I never left the woods, I just grew into them." The episode ended with a whisper, "I'm coming where it's louder." Chapter 10. When it speaks a new word, there was no longer a clear line between inside and outside. Adam sat motionless in the motel room, but he wasn't sure which version of the room this was. The real one, the one from his dreams, or the one inside the podcast, the one listeners imagined when they heard his voice. He hadn't spoken in days, not truly, but the uploads continued. Each night, a new episode appeared on his feed, each one narrated in his voice, each one not written by him. They were growing more confident now, the words, the cadence, the presence behind the voice. It was no longer mimicking, it was speaking with purpose, and it said something new tonight. The first word that didn't come from him, he stared at the waveform loading across his screen. The latest file, EP34, the root of the tongue. He didn't remember recording it, but that no longer meant anything. He pressed play. Silence, then a breath, then fallow. Not "this is Adam Fallow," just that one word, flat, final. As if it were the last thing left of him, a label, a species, a diagnosis. Then something unprecedented happened, a word he didn't recognize. Not in English, not any human tongue. A guttural, wet syllable that seemed to scrape across the inside of his skull like it was being read directly off his brain. His nose bled. The lights flickered. And somewhere not outside the room but beneath it, he heard something shifting. "Growing," he answers. Finally, his phone rang. No number, no ringtone, just his own voice on the line whispering, "You've been talking this whole time. You just didn't know what you were saying." Adam couldn't breathe. His mouth felt packed, not with cotton, not with air, with language, with roots. "We're almost done with you," the voice continued. "Soon you'll say things no one's heard before. And when they hear it, they'll listen. And when they listen, they'll open up." He dropped the phone, but the voice didn't stop. It was inside him now. The podcast that never ends the next morning, Adam was gone. The motel was clean. The gear was missing. All that remained was a single SD card on the bed. No label, no markings. Inside, one file. EP35, the Elk of Saints speaks. It's not in his voice anymore. It's in yours, perfect inflection. Matching tone, even background noise that lines up with where you are when you play it. It whispers a name you haven't told anyone, then a secret, then a word you don't understand but feel like you've always known. You tell yourself you'll delete the file, but somehow it's already uploaded. It shows you as the host. The episode is titled, "Coming Where It's Louder." And below it the caption reads, "Let them in, let them echo." You made it back for now, but the things in the dark never truly leave, do they? They watch, they wait, and perhaps they remember you now too. If you want to hear more, if you dare to listen again, step back into the shadows. Like the video, subscribe, but know this, some doors once opened do not close so easily.